Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. I am Yul Gordon. As you know, I have a partner. It's Chris Costa. Unfortunately, he can't be with us today, but that's okay. We're going to keep it going. Our guest today is Kate Baldwin. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm going really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's actually, is it? Hold on, let me get my timetables right. It's evening over there, right?
It is. It is 5
Okay.
p.m. We are exactly the opposite to you.
Okay, so so it's all you've already had most of your day. I'm just waking up and getting finished feeding the dog, so that's neither here nor there. It was just that's one way. That's just one thing. So tell us, the listeners and myself, a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got to where you are.
Yes, so I started off, I guess my passion has always been in sport and fitness. I have always loved a combination of strength training, so being in the gym, but also being outdoors. So I used to be a rower. And then as I got older, I got into triathlon and running. And that really sparked my love for what I wanted to do after I graduated high school. So
Okay, so how do you go from rowing to triathlon? I'm sorry
um,
I interrupted you, but
No,
that's
that is a good question. Do you know, I think rowing has a little bit of well, maybe it's more like this in Australia, but I think it's a little bit like this worldwide. It's quite an old school mentality, and it was very much a work harder, not smarter kind of.
okay.
And as I got older, got a little bit wiser, and I really liked a little bit more autonomy just to do what I felt like worked a little bit more for me. And I always enjoyed running. So I sort of transitioned over from doing a little bit of cross training from rowing to doing a little bit of cycling, a little bit of running. And then I realized I think I just enjoyed it a little bit more. It's so tough. If you talk to any rower, it's a really tough sport. Not that triathlon or Ironman's any easier,
Yeah,
really.
I was gonna say, triathlons don't seem to me to be in my mind anyway.
No, maybe it was probably just time for a different type of punishment.
Yeah, that
um,
there you go.
that's probably it. Yeah.
You as an athlete, almost in any sport and at any level, you have to embrace the punishment.
Absolutely. That's it. You have to be a little bit crazy and just enjoy suffering a little bit, I
Yeah,
think. So
yeah.
that love of sport really drove me into wanting to do physiotherapy, and then a university near where I was doing a double degree in physiotherapy and exercise and sports science. And I thought, well, that's the best of both worlds I could possibly study combined. So
Right.
a double degree in those.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I graduated, I worked in private practice physiotherapy, and I became really frustrated with the system because it felt very much like I was churning patients in and out and only doing manual therapy, and had 20-minute time slots with people where it just wasn't enough time to get to know anybody or to give them an appropriate rehab program. So
Right.
I very quickly realized it wasn't for me, and I really wanted to make a change in that. So I went back to the university. I did my undergraduate degree in actually, and enrolled in my master's looking at strength training in triathletes, and then did my PhD looking at strength training in long distance triathletes to improve economy and minimize injury risk. And then from that, I guess the word sort of spread about what I was doing around where I was locally. And then I opened up a little clinic. Well, I call it a little clinic. It was a big warehouse where we had physio treatment rooms, but we had a really nice big private gym that we had set up in there with all of the things that we felt like belonged in a physio and sports rehab setting. So we had, proper big squat racks, glute ham raisers, leg press, cable machines, everything that I think every athlete should have access to. And we combined traditional, I guess, physiotherapy with strength and conditioning. And then over time, I've just evolved into doing more just strength training for injury risk minimization and performance in endurance athletes. And that's where I am now. And I worked at Notre Dame University for 10 years, and I just resigned from that when we moved. And I'm just really focusing on working with athletes at the moment, which is really, really nice.
Okay. That's that to me. You got two things there. You have, the study of economy, and I'm assuming that's, a lot to do with energy systems and movement and those kind of things. And then you have the minimization of injury risk. That's kind of two areas where the field has progressed yet struggled for the last 20 years.
Yes. And they really, I feel like they're very hard to put together. So actually, and the proof is in the pudding. In my PhD, I actually only published my data on the performance side of things because my project got so big. But I find that whilst that progress is getting there, I think that a lot of people in the injury prevention space are really hard to tap into more of the heavier loading exercises, even though we know they are great for, say, tendon stiffness and tendon loading and performance things. They're also really good for injury risk minimization as well. But I think that you get the physios and more traditional kind of side of things are a little bit scared to tap into that, when in fact it can be the best thing to build up that robustness and resilience. So I really try to help mesh them together and combine them with more traditional exercises in terms of the activations and mobility work with some heavy stuff as well. So try and create this really well-rounded program where we address all of that for the athlete.
I don't know how it is in Australia, but I know that, and I'm just going to say it because I don't usually avoid, confrontation or controversy, but because the insurance companies run rehab, and that's why you have a 20-minute session with a client that does absolutely, it takes you 5 sessions to get through basically one session.
Yes, exactly. And it sounds similar to one of my first jobs that I had where, and again, I'm probably being a little bit controversial here as well, but it was very much you could invoice for these appointments and you could, if you're on a commission base, make good money from it, but your person isn't getting better, right? You're spending, like you said, so long, so many numerous appointments with people, and you're only just getting to know that person. And we also know that performance and injury risk reduction is also so much psychological as well, and that influences it a lot too. And you have to get to know somebody to contribute to that and to help that mindset as well. And you just can't do it in 20-minute consults. So when we opened our practice, and even my consults now that I do online, my initial consults are an hour and 15 minutes because I've only just started to get to know somebody in that time. And yes, it's not the best business model, but to give the
I agree with you. I think mine are they went from like a 90 minutes to 30 minutes to, I think I do them somewhere within 45 minutes now. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm old, so I've done 1,000 of them at least 1,000 of them. But I also, being old, have the privilege of working with who I want to work with. I don't, while I've made a living doing this, it's not my living now. It's something I want to continue to do. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to have, in a 12-hour day, I don't have to have 24 clients. I can have 4.
Yeah. And give them really good quality.
Right. And so that's what, I just transitioned to that, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to kind of slow the motor down and try to figure out, what do I do with the rest of the day and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, back to minimizing injury and working in that field. You not only are able to do that through some heavier loading even after injury, and they progress past where they are considered healed and ready to go back. It's that fear that I run into sometimes with physios, physical therapists over here for our listeners, that it's that fear of adding that additional load after they've returned to function that they don't want any part of. Nope. Yeah. They're healed, they're walking good, they're ambulatory, I'm not going to put more weight on them. They're ready to go back. They're ready to go back to play. No, they're not.
Exactly. That's it. So they were injured for a reason in the first place. And we know that one of the biggest risk factors for getting an injury is having that previous injury. Right. So they are the athletes that need it to keep going. Or you'll see people who go, okay, they are at risk of getting that injury. So then they set them up with a little bit more traditional 3 sets of 10 or 12 repetitions and moderate And I'm like, but then you're inflicting more fatigue, and it's not actually enough to get, especially in the endurance athlete space, we know that some heavy lifting is really good for performance, and that's what's going to help you improve that tendon stiffness and your maximal strength. But if you're giving them 3 sets of 10 or 12 at a moderate load, you're not quite getting that stimulus,
Right.
but you're producing fatigue, and then you're missing the whole point. If you just load them up a little bit more on the lower rep range with some heavier weights, you're going to get your stimulus, and you're actually going to load them less.
Now imagine this. Imagine it being 2006 and you're standing in the gym with me and you're a distance triathlete, a marathon runner, or a middle distance runner. And I'm telling you, okay, let's see, okay, I'm looking at you now. I'm telling you, okay, let's put 160 pounds on the bar. And you're going, why do I need to do that?
Do you know that I still get this now in 2024? If you go on my YouTube videos, I did a YouTube video about why endurance athletes should include some heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And I explicitly said,
and some upper body work.
Yes, exactly. And I explicitly stayed in there. I'm not saying go in the gym and just hop under a barbell, do it straight away. I say warm up, get used to it, progress your loads, etc. And there are comments on there from people who are just absolutely bashing me, saying, I have no idea what I'm talking about and this is ridiculous and no endurance athletes need to lift heavy. And you've obviously had exactly the same, and it still keeps going. And it's such a battle.
Well, the battle comes from ignorance, really. I'm just going to say it. Mm-hmm. They don't know. We're not out there trying to take a marathoner or a triathlete or ultra distance runner. We're not trying to add bodybuilder muscle.
No.
We're not. We don't want you to spend 9 hours in the gym. Yeah. We don't even want you to spend 2 hours in the gym.
Exactly. I'm like, you go in, do your 4 sets of 4 squats. You're good. You can go.
Yeah. But you need to put the system under some duress.
Yes.
So that when you have to pull that last incline, there it is. You need more strength than you do endurance.
Exactly. But it's crazy because you can spell it out, and I do that a lot, and I've got the practical applications paper, and I always explain to people, and people still, like you said, they don't want to hear it. And sometimes I feel like saying, I don't have shares in heavy lifting. Heavy lifting isn't a thing that I monetize. I just do what works and what the research supports and what works for athletes and what
exactly
logically works. But, I even remember going to a Sports Med Australia conference, and Andy Franklin Miller was up and he was talking about heavy strength training for runners. And in the middle of his presentation, a coach was saying, you don't do heavy strength training. Where's your muscular endurance? Your 3 sets of 20. And he's going, no. And these two were having this disagreement, and someone had the audacity to stand up in the middle of his presentation of someone who knows what he's talking about, and this person with no expertise in the area was trying to tell him he's wrong because it's just been passed down for so long, and it's such an uphill battle.
In the weight room, in the strength training world, we call it gym science. There's a whole bunch of guys who are well versed in gym science. They've seen people do stuff, and to some degree, it has worked, and I never take away from an individual's experience. Mm-hmm. But when science tells me that if you just make this slight change for this little bit of time, individuals will get better. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna deny the science, especially when it's been well worked out and well proven.
That's it.
Don't bring me gym science and say, well, I worked with Bobby, from, Johnsonville that used to do it this way and he was huge. Well, how many people did Bobby work? How many did he work with? Which is not important, but how many injuries did Bobby himself have?
Yes. And it's also like you touched on before, and you say, we're not trying to make you big, but then those people are the ones that they go in the gym and lift 3 sets of 12 with 60 seconds rest and at those loads. And I'm like, but if you want to improve your maximal strength, get out of those zones. They're a little bit more your hypertrophy zones anyway. And like I said, you're going to end up with more load and more fatigue. So if you go and do that because you don't want to listen to me, you're doing the exact opposite of what you actually want to achieve.
Exactly.
And more often than not, when I explain it like that to people, you see their eyes just go, oh, penny drop.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, can you explain that a little more? That's what I was telling you.
Yes. That,
That's exactly what I was saying.
and I
So,
like it too because sometimes I'll go to a conference or somewhere and I'm a slightly smaller female, and I think I do get a little bit looked at of like, oh, she wouldn't know what she's doing lifting weights. But
yeah, how could she know anything about lifting weights?
yeah, I can lift weights and I can run, and I've spent over 10 years doing this in my job.
And here's what I tell, especially a lot of young men right now. I said if you look at both population of males and females, those and you start at their current weight, and their body composition and all that, and then you put each in the weight room. I
Mhm.
said 9 times out of 10, females will make faster progress than males.
Mm.
They said, well, what do you mean? I'm stronger than she is. I'm like, I understand you're stronger than she is, but that's physiological.
Yes.
That's because of the chemical and hormonal makeup that you have in your system and hers. So I said, but the anecdotal part of that is if I'm working with females, I don't have to make so many corrections to bad habits and gym
Yeah.
science. Literally, just a guy comes in, he wants to do, 9 sets of one. I said, well,
Yeah.
why do you want to do 9 sets of one? Because such and such on Flex website does 9 sets of one, and he's the strongest guy in the world. I said, yeah, but he's done a whole lot of other stuff before that.
I love it. Actually, I must say, I have a lot of female athletes that I work with, and I think a lot of them pick me too because I am one of the minority of strength coaches that are female. And I love working with them. They always listen to me. They're my most
Yeah. I,
adherent, obedient
Yeah,
patient.
I had a daughter and her friends in high school and college. Boy, they were hard headed, but in a good way. They never pushed back against what I was telling them,
Yeah.
but they always wanted to know why.
Yeah.
So that kept me on my toes. I was
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Most guys, if you ask, strength coach, they come out, and a lot of guys get erroneously brought through the system thinking that if I tell you to do it, just do it
Mm.
because. No, I want you to ask me why, because I want you to understand why you're doing this, what we're trying to accomplish. One,
Yes.
it makes my job easier for you.
Yeah.
I'm inherently kind of lazy, so I want it to be easier. So,
Yeah.
so ask me why, and if I can't tell you, I'll go find the answer for you.
I 100% agree with you. And that's something I always get feedback on is I'm really good at explaining why. And I think it just helps that buy-in. If you tell people why they're doing it, they'll do it. And I always say to people, if you are not sure why you're doing an exercise, whether it's prescribed by me or someone else, ask why. And if that person can't explain to you why, maybe you shouldn't be doing it, or maybe they don't know what they're doing. Because I always
Right.
think if someone is just because I said so, and that used to be a little bit, I've experienced coaches like that before where from triathlon and other sports where I've questioned a session, not because I'm questioning their authority or what they're doing. I've just wanted to know what's the stimulus that I'm getting out of this. So then I can understand what effort I need to put in during a particular threshold or whatever it is that I'm doing. So I know what the purpose is. And being a sports scientist, I just also like to know because
Yeah. Tell me why. I was always, look, if I get hurt, I want it to be my fault, not yours.
yes, and you need
If as an athlete, if I get hurt, don't let it be because of bad coaching,
exactly.
because I'm going to be upset.
Yeah. And if someone, and I've had coaches before say, well, because I said so, or because it's just meant to hurt. I've been told, oh, it's just meant to hurt, that session. It's just meant to be a horrible session. And I'm like, no, I'm very happy to suffer, but I would like to know the point. Are we working on VO2 max?
But there are some sessions you go into and you barely feel like you've done any work.
Mm. And then there's
You,
always a reason for it, right? They say, well, that's
yeah,
okay. The point of this was X, Y, Z. It's the same with
yeah,
every one of my strength
yeah.
exercises. People go,
Yeah.
oh, that doesn't feel like a stimulus today. And I go, well, that's because you raced last week and you've got this coming up and we're just maintaining. You're just
Yeah.
coming in, you're just maintaining a neural drive. And they'll go, oh,
Or,
okay.
or we're doing, I have some younger athletes now, as I indicated earlier, but their competition seasons have started. So we talk about, they come in now only once a week and we do recovery stuff. And it's a day, between 24 and 48 hours after, 3 games on the weekend, Friday night lights, all that stuff. So we come in and we do some active recovery and some checking on some injuries. And I tell them, I said, look, you have in season, postseason, off season, and preseason. I said, and there's objectives in all 4 of those. I don't like to call them periods, but stages. I said, there are objectives. I said, don't cloud your mind with this period and that period and trying to understand linear progressions. That's not your job. That's mine.
Yeah.
Okay, you just worry about in season, preseason, postseason, off season. I said, we're in season now. So everything that we gained in the off season, we're going to try to maintain and maybe make some slight improvements, keep ourselves from getting, mitigate injury. Let's put it that way. Those kind of things. And they look at me like, oh, so we don't need to lift during the season? Well, yeah, you do, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
We're not looking for these, massive improvements like we would over the off season period.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the goal. So
yeah. And that's it. And that's the same with the endurance athletes that I work with. When they're just in a bit of their off season, I'm going, okay, look, what's your weakness? And it may be, and every athlete's off season looks different because sometimes given the huge training loads, and I mean, there's a study that shows that 86% of long distance triathletes obtain some form of substantial injury in the lead up to man. And so for a lot of athletes I work with, I'm like, we're just building you to be robust. What are your injuries? What's the most common ones that you get? Okay, stresses, look, wait, all right, if it's stress fractures, say we're going to do a little bit of bone loading. Or no, is it more glute tendinopathy? We're getting you glute median of steel, whatever it is. Or I might have an athlete like, or my husband Nick's the perfect example. He is just the most robust person, probably because I strength train him. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, see, there you go. Nice little plug there, Kate. Nice little plug. I like it.
He's so robust. So his off season looks totally different to some of the other athletes because for him, I'm like, look, let's keep those injuries at bay or make sure you stay injury free. But his will be more pure maximal strength. So then he doesn't fatigue on the back end of a marathon. But that's it. It's like, this is the point of this. You know why we're doing it now. Let's go for that. And then when it comes into, if he might have a marathon or triathlon, whatever it is that the athletes have, I'll go, okay, we're going to drop back. Now you're only doing 1 heavy lift a week or, 1 heavy lift per session. So it'll be, say, like squats one day, deadies the next day and or the next session. And they'll go, oh, that's not a lot. And I go, no, because we're just maintaining that maximal strength now because you're racing frequently. But they always know what it is or what they're doing. So when people say, oh, just do it, just get it done, just do it, you're like, no, you got to explain these things to athletes, especially endurance athletes, because a lot of them are a little fishy out of water in the gym, and a lot of people hate the gym. I found endurance athletes notoriously don't like the gym. So I'm like, they really have to know why they're in here because otherwise they're not going to come back.
Okay. So now that's a good transition to the next kind of section. Let's flip it over to all other athletes because endurance athletes, you guys are special. And when I say special, it's because it's kind of, well, I'm going to go run 26 miles today. What? No. We're not doing that. I got an automobile. I can get there in less time. I don't have to put myself through that and for nothing. No, let's look at all other athletes, okay? And why they don't understand why sometimes they need to do a little bit of endurance work for a nice foundation in that area for everything else they're going to do. I have football players, rugby players, big guys don't want to. If you say miles are in training today, if you say miles, they start grumbling. They start looking at you, man. They start giving you the shuffle, looking at their feet. But some of the most successful athletes I've worked with were linemen who didn't mind going out and running 3 or 4 miles. Did we do it every day? No. Did we do it, in the off season? Maybe once a week we had the endurance day where we'd go out. We wouldn't do over 3 miles. And I wasn't looking for somebody who, weighed 280 plus pounds to break records running fast. What the thing I was careful about was, hey, get you a good pair of cushioned sneakers, running shoes, or the bigger guys. I said, look, running shoes don't have enough cushion for you. You need to be in cross trainers. Well, they're not light. I said, I don't care if they're light. We're not trying to get you to be faster in a 3 mile in a cross country run.
Yeah.
I said, we're going to go out. We're going to, run along the road, make sure you're technically sound, or we're going to run back in the woods, enjoy yourself, pick it up a little bit, but don't necessarily. All the guys that I worked with anyway, now it's part of their thing. They go out at least once a week and do a little bit of mileage, a little bit.
And it's so important, though. You're just building that aerobic base, and also, like you touched on too, that biomechanics of running when you're a little bit under fatigued as well. And if your sport involves running, it's really important to have that. But it's so interesting to hear you say that, because I work predominantly with endurance athletes, and I've never thought of it as the exact opposite with the majority of the other athletes. Literally, the issue you have with getting your athletes through those running miles is the issue that I have getting athletes to strength training. It is exactly the flip, but you know how important it is. It's so important. Maybe we should get the endurance athletes to take your team sports athletes for a run, and then your team sports athletes can take my endurance athletes in the gym.
Hey, yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that, is because, I brought everybody in the gym. I got good enough to where in my facility, I could deal with a lot of things going on. So I could have 5 clients in the gym doing exactly different things, all different sports. But we were, everybody was together, and it was sort of like a family. Endurance athlete come in, and I'd see a big 300-pound football player over there spotting a, 105-pound female endurance athlete. And he's spotting her with 2 fingers like this on the squat. You know what I mean? So he's squatting her like, okay.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah.
And I
not with me probably.
but or I would see a female soccer player, barking at, a Olympic weightlifter to do 5 more sit-ups.
Yeah. Love it.
So, but that atmosphere was, what I started seeing was the guys would show up at female competitions, females would show up at guys, football players at soccer games, volleyball players at track meets, and it became a community, not just of whatever sport you were in, but of athletes all realizing we all suffer together.
And it's so nice too, because in the gym you can do that and you can talk to each other. And I know that probably seems duh, because you work predominantly with team sports athletes, but when you're endurance athletes, it can be lonely a lot of the time, even though you might train with people on runs, but often it's solo. So when we ran group classes, everyone would get to know everyone. It was so unique because you don't normally have a training session with 8 other people where you have rest periods. I used to have to set timer in the sessions because all my endurance athletes were so notorious for skipping the rest. So I'd literally say we're going every 3 minutes. Like, no, you're forced to have 2.5 minutes of recovery. If it feels too long, your weight's not heavy enough. And I would have set that timer, and they would be forced to not do anything, and they would just talk to each other, and this beautiful community grew. And it's just like what you said, and it's, I think, so unique for the endurance athletes in particular, because you actually get to talk to other athletes, you build more of a community that way, and it's really nice. And I say that to a lot of my athletes. I'm like, the gym is a total it's a different way to get similar results. Like you're still improving your economy of movement. Yes, you get that from your running, your swimming, your cycling, but you also get it from these movements to the same end goal, but in a different way. And it's a totally different way. So embrace it and enjoy it and force yourself to have rest. Enjoy not having to crack a full on sweat because your heart rate's so high. Enjoy feeling like, oh, one more rep in the tank, it's so different. I'm like, just enjoy it and embrace it because it is different and it's great.
The world we create sometimes as athletes, team sports or individual sports, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you set yourself outside of a support system and you just have a couple of people you depend on. Mm-hmm. And you don't really have that support system because you don't think anybody else really understands what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody who's, not into sports or maybe in the music, they don't understand what you're trying to do. So you don't have those people in your circle. Mm-hmm. One of the things I thought, I've always thought that the Olympics always did was bring a whole bunch of communities together.
Yeah.
I mean, a bunch of communities and not just athletic.
Yeah.
Because now you bring in the professionals like you and I, who are, especially me, old athletes who used to be I don't even claim to be an athlete anymore, but who had a little experience as an athlete, but now you're in the profession of caring for athletes and taking care of athletes. Now you come back into the fold and you kind of get recognized and you're seen and you become no less or no more important at something like the Olympic Games or the Worlds or anything, but more prominent. You're seen more.
Yeah.
And you become more a part of the athlete's day.
Yeah. And you feel more valued.
Yeah. I mean, in those situations, not a whole bunch of people get to go to large events like that and be counted on, so to speak. But okay. So let's keep going. What have we talked about so far? Let me see here. Injury risk, economy. Let's talk about the profession a little bit. So you got into this as an athlete, then you moved, and then you've kind of gone from working in a large facility to a smaller one to doing your own thing. Mm-hmm. Talk to maybe our listeners out there about the value at each thing. Working in a large facility, we all get that.
Yeah.
But what's the value of, and what are some of the things that you've learned, hitting your head on brick walls on your own, or in a smaller facility?
Yeah. I must say I had a really nice balance because I was always still employed and a researcher and academic at a university. So I always on a small load. So I always sort of had my foot in the door in there, and I had exposure to a bigger institution. And then I guess having our own business was easier, and having that because we work with individual athletes, and endurance is a lot more unique like that because there's not big teams of endurance athletes. It's more individuals. So I could work with athletes, recreational, everyone, and people across the world. So it was really unique in that way. But the most important thing for me, having my own business and doing that myself, was to keep learning. So I would, I had the opportunity to write the chapter with Greg Haff and have exposure to him. So I'd pick his brain about things. I would always go to continued education things. I'd do all the online learning courses. I'd go to the conferences. I'd present at conferences. I would still be involved in my research and projects and apply for grants. So I always took it upon myself to keep learning because I just also really enjoyed it. But I think that sometimes when people go off in their own business space and do their own thing, the benefits of that obviously is you can set your own consult times, you can work with the athletes that you want, you can do things your way, but I think you could get lost in that and then start an ego that gets too big and you get stuck in your own ways and you forget to learn and grow and develop and learn from other people. And I remember that at one of the courses I went to, and the lady running it said to me, "I'm surprised that you're here." And I said, "Why am I here?" And it was a running injuries master course. And she said, "Well, because you already know this stuff." And I was like, oh, I know some of it, but I've learned new things. She was like, there are a lot of people in your situation that wouldn't keep coming to these things because, I've done my research and a lot of stuff, I guess. But I think it's so important not to be one of those people. Like, you can't get your ego so big that you think that you know everything, because you really don't. It's like that Dunning-Kruger effect where you think you're at the pinnacle, but really you and then slowly come back up. I'm at slow now, and I just want to stay there. I don't want to go up here. I'm happy being humbled.
one of the things that I've always said, and I went and I will readily say this, I went the absolute long way to a doctorate, because I'm just, I've only had my doctorate now for a couple of years, but I always tell people I accidentally got there, and because my purpose was to keep learning.
Yeah.
So as I kept taking classes and kept going to seminars and doing all that stuff, I finally had someone, it was someone at Johns Hopkins University, say, "Hey, why don't you join our doctoral program?" I'm like, "Man, I can't get in your program. I'm too stupid for that." They kind of looked at me and said, "Well, we're looking at your, we've seen your academic stuff, and you're kind of halfway there already." And I'm like, "Oh, you really think so?" So I let it go for another however many years, and then said, "Well, I'll do something." So I started plunking away, and then all of a sudden I got a call and said, "Well, you need to start thinking about what you're going to do at graduation." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Now I'd done some research and you do the papers and you go through the classes, but my focus was never on, "Well, I want to get my doctorate so I can be this guy."
Yeah.
It was, I need to know some more stuff.
Yeah.
In my brain, that's what it was. I need to know what Kate knows. Or I need to not let my comfort in the field of strength and conditioning fool me into thinking that I was at a level of knowledge that I knew I wasn't, or at a level of understanding. I don't want to necessarily say knowledge, because you can know a lot of stuff but not understand it, if that makes any sense.
Yes, I think people are very good at just spinning things out of their mouth and putting big words out there. I'm like, you don't really know what you're actually talking about.
I'd rather have a fine base of knowledge, and I try to keep expanding that, but there's only so much room. A fine base of knowledge, but then an understanding of what I do know.
And then it sounds like, too, from the way that you did it, you would have focused on the things that's important to your role and where you see yourself, and also what you're interested in. And that's very similar to me as well. I was just so frustrated at the physio world and how quick everything was. And I was like, well, my interest is in preventing injuries and strength training. And then I took a long time to do mine because I just was enjoying it as well. I was like, I want to do this, and I want to do it in a field that I like and something that I can see myself in. And then you just slowly evolve like that. And I like that you said too that you've only got so much up here, and it's so easy to get caught up in, well, now I have to know this and this and this. And I used to do that a little bit. Oh, I could branch into this sport, or I could do that. And I'm like, no. I'm really good at strength training, runners, triathletes, swimmers, cycle, my endurance athletes. That's my jam. There's plenty of them. I love what I do. I'm good at it. I'm sticking there.
Mine has always been field and court sport athletes.
Yeah.
So I didn't go to runners too much. I had some, and that's usually because they come to me 3 or 4 or 5 times, and I finally say, "Look, I've had a skeleton athlete, winter sports athletes. I've had snowboarders. Now that I picked up a skeleton athlete, then all of a sudden, all these, extreme game athletes come out of the woodwork."
Yeah.
And I'm like, where you guys been? I don't even skateboard. Go find a big hill at the park and do whatever you got to do. But understanding, that this was a real endeavor now, and the X Games and all that stuff. That there's some strength training that they needed. There was some additional, although they're snowboarders and skiers and people like that are equipped with a big bunch of body awareness, to be able to do flips like gymnasts. but there's still a need for the weight room.
Yeah.
And there's still a need for that foundation and endurance.
Yeah.
There's still this. I tell athletes every day, and this is just me. I'm getting on my soapbox. Let me get my ladder out. So I'm getting on my, the thing about coming into athletics is not about being the best at every single thing all the time. Some people get stuck on perfection. It's all about effort. The only thing that has to be perfect as an athlete is an effort. Yep. You give a perfect effort every day in the weight room. I don't like sitting around in the weight room. Recovering, resting, cool. Sitting around, you like you're at the cafe having a coffee. No, yeah. On your phone. I'm like, if you have time to do more than answer one text on your phone, you're lollygagging.
Yeah.
But I tell them all the time, hey, just come in, give us an effort, and you'll find that the goals that you've set for yourself are attainable. If you're not reaching your goals, look at your effort.
Yep. And consistency, just consistently rocking up and progress. That's it. And keeping it real, doing that simple.
My next 2 words were consistency and persistency.
Yep, absolutely. And so people also look at me when I give them a strength program, especially endurance athletes, and it's really simple. It's really simple. And they've never even been in the gym before. And they look at me like I've given them baby steps. I'm like, well, I have, because you just need to get in the gym and you just need to go consistently twice a week. That's all I want you to do, is do these good bread and butter exercises twice a week for 6 weeks. When you've done that, you will get better at them. Then we can progress things.
Like, because you already have a training schedule.
Exactly. I'm like, we got to fit this around it. And they're often the ones that come in that are, I don't want to do strength training. I don't really have the time. So I give them a really simple, time concise one. Oh, why is it so simple? Why is it so short? I'm like, just trust me, get in, get out, get it consistently done, week in, week out, and then come back and see me. And then, it's funny, I even got a message from one of the clients I'm working with, and she said, Kate, this strength training stuff, do you know what really works? My average heart rate for this run has gone down to this, and the only thing I can put it down to is your strength program. She said, do you know what works? I was like, I do know that.
Do you know what works?
Yeah. And she just did it consistently. She did exactly what I told her to do, and she thought it was magic. And I also love working with endurance athletes because often they're not doing it, or they're doing it wrong. And all they do is the consistency, like you said, and just that progress over time. Yeah. And then they're seeing these huge results from it because they've got a perfect little program for them that they just tick off, and then the results are huge.
And it's the time. The hardest thing to do is to get them to be consistent.
Yeah.
Because the training session, well, coach, all I'm going to do is go out there and run 3 miles. That'll take me about 30 minutes. I can fit that in anywhere. But let's put it in here. And let's be persistent about meeting that time. So be consistent about doing it and always meet the time. Don't drag it all over the day, because it's always going to take a backseat to something else you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty foundational, so we need to put it in there. But anyway.
Mm-hmm. Totally agreed.
So we've talked a little bit about those couple of things. Let's talk about what led you to writing a book.
Book chapter. I was just asked. I felt so privileged. So I was just asked, and I was very privileged to do it. So I got to work with Greg Half with one of them, and Glenn Deacon with the other one. And that was through knowing Ben. I don't know him personally. I've actually never met him in person before, but he's
kind of like Greg with me. I've never met him personally, but I feel like I know him because we've either communicated some kind of way. It was either on LinkedIn early on or something. But anyway.
That's Ben and I, and it's funny because this is going to sound very cliche, but we follow each other's accounts on Instagram, so I'm always seeing what he's doing with his Labradors and all of these. I feel like I know him. We've exchanged a lot of emails, but he got in touch with me after I published my my strength training for triathletes, my theory to practice paper, and he was one of he's one of the editors, obviously, and so he'd read that, and he reached out to me to be on his podcast, and then invited me, obviously, to do the book chapters, and he's provided me with so many opportunities and networks. And I knew of Greg Haff before because we're both in WA, but then Ben sort of connected us even more. And then I guess just at conferences got to know people, and that's how I sort of got into then writing those chapters with them. And I think that so many of these opportunities have just come from networking and just putting yourself out there and doing the hard work and producing good work, hopefully, that people read, and getting it out there. And then these opportunities just, I don't say they do present themselves, but it's because you put yourself out there, right? And you make the effort to go and network or get your work published, etc. So that's how a lot of that has come up just from that. And I do think that now strength training for endurance athletes, in particular runners and triathletes, is getting a lot of traction. Now it's more common practice, but I think that when I did get into it, 8 years ago, I've been in the industry more than that, but started publishing, my first one was 8 years ago. So I think then I was one of the fewer people, especially in triathlon, so it was easier maybe to get my name out there, and there's not as many of us that do strength training, I think, in endurance athletes in particular, because it's not agility stuff, it's not that kind of thing. It's not, it's obviously quite different.
When you think of strength and conditioning or things like that, people immediately go to all these drills and all this stuff, when a lot of times, even for speed and agility, it's I do a lot of speed and agility work without a lot of drills. Oftentimes you won't see a bunch of cones and ladders and hurdles and stuff out there. I don't use that. You don't have that. You don't have that in the competition.
Yeah, that's it. And I let the athletes do that in their track sessions. They always do that in their warm-ups before their speed work. And, their coach will do that for them. So I'm like, they're taking care of that. Let's do the gym-based stuff. That's how I'm more. If their track coach or their running coach isn't, then I will maybe consider it. More often than not, I do more things like a little bit of fast feet to increase cadence, but not too much. I'm more like, if they can't do those drills properly, I'm like, well, what's weak in you then? What's lacking? You can practice the drills there. I'll fix what's lacking for you to do them.
Finding. Let's just talk about that a little bit. Finding where we fit into the athlete's ethos and their way of going about how they're, trying to get better at their sport or activity or event. Is, instead of trying to fit them into our program or event, is one of the things, is one of the what I call the final frontiers of strength training. Yeah. Everybody wants to, instead of looking at the athlete, seeing what they're doing, seeing what their needs are, what are the demands and the requirements of the event, sport, or whatever, and then building the program or making adjustments, we try to bring them in and fit them into our system. Hold on, why do you have a system? No, you may have an approach.
Yeah.
But why do you have a system? That's why, and it becomes, anybody who tells me they have a system, I always start to think of rigidity.
Yeah.
Your system is so rigid that, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, athlete, it's not the same as that person over there. They don't have the same strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And so this person is not going to fit into your system because they can't squat 225 pounds. Well, when they get up there, then they can come to my system.
Yeah. So you might be missing such a good opportunity with that athlete, right? Judging them on that one thing. It's like that saying, whatever, if you judge a fish on its ability to ride a bicycle, it's always going to think it's stupid, right? If you're trying to get these athletes to fit into your system and they're not, because they don't fit your way, it's so narrow-minded, but that athlete may have different strengths and weaknesses, or they may just have things that you could still work on. But again, it comes back to sort of what we were saying before, where if you can't explain a session, I don't know if you know what you're doing. It's the same if you have this is my system, this is this way, and everyone has to fit into it. You are not accommodating for that person because no human body is the same, no mindset is the same. And there may be really simple fixes. You might just have someone just lacking a little bit of tendon stiffness through their Achilles, and then they're going to have the spring, the step you need them to have. But if you don't see that, you're just missing out. There's a lot of athletes like that.
I've always found that the best coaches, either accidentally or on purpose, either through experience or intuitively, always have enough flexibility in their systems, if they call them that they can bring in an athlete, but their systems will adjust. And so the athlete fits if it's a good athlete. Mm-hmm. But there's some, and you see them in team sports, you see them in individual sports where, hey, you come in, you do what we do, and it's been successful for this long, and so it's going to be successful forever. And while it may have been successful and it may be successful, most times it's because you've always been lucky enough to have certain types of athletes.
Absolutely.
That work. Well, isn't it appropriate to get athletes that work in your system? Well, it's appropriate as a coach to be able to bring in and get the best out of every athlete.
Yeah, and the athletes that they do have that do well, they don't have longevity because they've peaked in that system and they're not willing to change it again to keep them progressing.
Right.
So then the athletes plateau, or they get injured, or they just get stale, they get bored, or whatever it is, because that system is so regimented, and you think you don't have the ability to then change it and adapt it for that athlete to keep progressing. So they may have short-term good people who perform, but then they either leave eventually, or they, like I said, get injured or plateau because they don't change the system. And I'm like, just adapt for that athlete.
Just adapt a little bit. You don't have to completely rewrite what you do every time a new athlete comes in. But make those, and don't here's the biggest thing for me is I believe it's a disservice to the athlete if you're not adaptable.
Yeah. 100%.
And if you're really rigid, because while they may have some success with you under your system, say an athlete, I'll just use a football player. Say I'm a football player and I'm really good and I play defense, so I'm a linebacker. But now I've lost maybe I've lost a half a step. I'm a little heavier, and of course I'm no longer 27. I'm 33. You know what I mean? So I'm a little older, and 33 in that sport is starting to get a little long in the tooth. So can you still be effective? Well, if I have to still run your, endurance test for whatever, or your conditioning test for whatever, and I don't do as well as I did when I was 27, well, I'm 33 now, and I'm 15 to 20 pounds heavier. But am I still effective? And have I adapted? Has the system adapted to let me continue to be successful?
And it can be really simple things, say, for the athlete. Like you might say, okay, look, you're just going to do an extra set of the mobility work today.
Right.
Or you're
going to do one less.
Exactly. Or do you know what? Dial back on the heavy strength for this time. You're going to do more of this one. Or, hey, you're getting more hammy strains than the others. Extra set of Nordics for you. Or whatever it is. And it can be as simple as that. And again, it's not hard, but I think that some coaches can be lazy.
I had one of my athletes tell me, he said, "This feels a lot like a rehab session, coach." I said, well, that's because you've come off of, 3 games in 6 days as a soccer player. I said, of course it's going to be a rehab session. It's going to be I said, don't think of it as rehab. I said, think of it as recovery.
Yeah.
I said, we have 4 days now before the next game. Let's take 1 day to recover a little bit. Then let's get back to work. That doesn't mean we're not going to do nothing. It just means, we're not going to try to beat you up when you come in here. We're not going to try to get, sometimes the coach sees that block of, we got 4 days. We're going to really go to work for the next 3 days or 2 days. Then we'll break. well, maybe that's good. It depends on what the problem is or what the issue is, but most times I think it's like you got a hamstring strain, a groin strain, an Achilles strain. We might not want to go out and do, box jumps.
And do you know, also, I think it's funny because I see that obviously a lot with particularly triathletes because the training load is so big. And I think I probably annoy more coaches than make them happy. They like it when the athletes perform well. But because I do the strength side of it and I'm a physio as well, I think I probably annoy a little bit of some coaches and some physios because someone will come into me for a strength program, but I'll see something lacking in their rehab stuff. So of course I put my physio hat on and I go, we're combining this. We're touching with that. So then I end up, confession, yes, I take over rehab programs. I see some and I think that looks terrible and I take over. I'm like, this is bad. You're not getting enough of a stimulus. You need to do this, this, this. And then I've annoyed the physio.
Yeah.
I've taken over and being a physio,
that's all right. You kind of, and I'll tell you from my own experience, you'll kind of transition out of that at some point and realize maybe I'll just go tell the physio it might be better if we do a little bit more, or maybe we'll just do a little bit more and I won't say anything about it.
Yes, I'm definitely, I just tell the athlete, this is what we need to do. And I always say, if your physio wants to talk to me about it, they're more than welcome to. No one's ever called me.
Yeah. Well, and again, they do more than serve a purpose. They are actually a vital part of the team that works with athletes. It's just that sometimes, in some cases, and I feel like overall, the fear of moving or letting the athlete transition to more strength-based resistance training is unfounded. It's just a matter of time. It's because they don't get, like you said earlier, there's not enough time for physios to actually see that athlete transition past function because you're only spending 20 minutes a day. And you can't count on rehab, the exercises that you send home. There's about a 98% failure rate on those.
Absolutely. And also I think that sometimes, if I'm thinking with my physio hat on and then my strength hat on, I think that if you're a strength coach, athletes will accept when you make them sore because they go, okay, it's my strength coach. These exercises might inflict a little bit of DOMS or I may feel this here or there, but it's okay. But if as a physio, I'm giving an athlete rehab exercises and they might make them initially a little bit sore, I'm talking just DOMS and not extreme DOMS. Just a little bit. I think that the perception from athletes to go, but you're a physio, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be making me feel better. And I think this perspective is there as well from athlete expectations.
Some of that is the physio profession's fault.
100%.
Because they, and I'm going to say this, and I'm probably going to get in trouble, but they don't see the people they're working with as clients. They see them as patients.
And they just want to make them feel good so they come back.
And that in and of itself is a bad place to start. Hey, you're our client today. This is what we're here to do. You might feel a little bit of this instead of,
oh, we're good.
The patient ethos is okay, we're going to make you feel better.
TLC, yes. Yeah. Some tender loving care so you walk out of here and you love me and you want to come back. Yeah, I absolutely agreed with you.
We have Kate. We've reached the end of our time, which is amazing because I just looked up. I just looked up at the clock. But
we've been doing an hour.
Yeah, that's what happens sometimes when it gets going. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us and come on and going through the circles about getting, in your remote cabin up in the woods or out in the bush, your remote cabin, getting internet. You can tell your husband to stop running on the generator now.
I know. He was literally at the stage where he was going to get, what's it called, like the old school Ethernet cable and connect it from the modem. I can have it on my computer. That was the extent we were going to. Oh my goodness! Wow, I
But
feel like
it's been great having you on. We hope that
I've
you would accept a future invitation when we call you back to catch up.
absolutely. I would
But
love to.
but again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the effort in getting to us. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I've absolutely loved it.
It's been Performance Talk, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest today has been Kate Baldwin, and we're out.